evening, you're with ET Now. This is India Development Debate, the only show on national television that puts the spotlight on development issues. I'm Sandeep Gurumurthi, joining you from our news center in Mumbai. Joining me in Delhi is my colleague Supriya Shrinate. Straight to the big debate tonight. Looks like there is a disconnect between New Delhi and Nagpur as far as managing the affairs of the economy is concerned. RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat today chose the symbol of Indian capitalism, the Bombay Stock Exchange, to express the Sangh's displeasure over the Modi government's economic policies, especially the soft stance towards big industry. Bhagwat, the first RSS chief to attend a BSE event, asserted that large corporates should help small enterprises make a meaningful contribution to the country's economy rather than focusing on their own revenues and profits. The next attack was on the consumption-driven growth model. Sounding a bit like a leftist, Bhagwat said it is high time India moved away from the GDP-driven economic development to address the concerns of the needy.
Indeed, at a time when the government is working hard to get the maximum buck from selling off Air India, the RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat says the ownership and control of the national carrier should always rest with an Indian company. Now, the other two topics that figured high in his landmark speech at the BSE were job creation and farm distress. It is interesting to note that the RSS chief chose the BSE to air Nagpur's view on the Modi government's economic policies. While there was of course no direct attack on the Modi model of development or on New Delhi, several of his ideas are in direct contrast with those of the NDA government's reform-focused approach. The message from Nagpur to New Delhi is delivered through Mumbai, and that is a big discussion on the India development debate tonight. Taking across to that special discussion and talking us through all of that will be Narendra Taneja, spokesperson of the BJP, Ratan Sharda, writer and political analyst, R. Jagannathan, editorial director, Swarajya magazine, Mohan Guruswamy, economist, and Rajiv Desai, political analyst. Thanks very, very much, gentlemen, for being with us. It was quite a speech, touched upon a whole host of topics, never contradicted New Delhi openly, not blatantly, but plenty of issues that could be highlighted where they were in direct contrast with what New Delhi's stance is. Narendra Taneja, since you represent the BJP, I think it's only fair that we begin things with you. How much influence does RSS really wield on the economic policy of the government, or is it restricted to just being the social and the political agenda setter? Because it's widely known that philosophical ideologue is the RSS, but is it also the BJP and the Modi government's economic fountainhead?
You see, first of all, people have elected Bharatiya Janata Party. BJP comes out with its manifesto, as you know, and then the people elect, and people have given us the mandate to basically implement the manifesto that, you know, we took to the people. So, and is the cabinet of the government which basically runs this country, including economic policy. That's all done, and within the cabinet there are you know, separate committees, including committees on economic issues and so on and so forth. But that said, but at the same time, Bharatiya Janata Party has a very deep connect with the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, and they have their own ideas. They look at India very differently. They look at India as a very long-term basis. As a political party, we focus on 5 years, promises that we have made in 5 years, and we try to work very hard to deliver on that. At the same time, we face headwinds, criticism, so on and so forth. Sometimes we do have to basically align, realign, do those kind of things being a political party. But when it comes to RSS, they have a long-term agenda. They have their own vision. They have their own thoughts, you know, when it on economic issues, social issues, political issues, cultural issues, and from anthropology to practically everything. Which, of course, there are regular discussions that take place between RSS and Bharatiya Janata Party. But when it comes to the implementation, when it comes to the agenda, that's entirely decided by Bharatiya Janata Party, because people have elected BJP. And in BJP, and then together with our partners in NDA, we together run the government, and all decisions are taken by the cabinet. Okay. Thoughts, ideas can come from RSS, can also come from you, from your viewers, and similarly from other people.
Okay. So Jaggi, if Mr. Narendra Taneja is to be believed, you and I have as much influence on policy making in this country as the RSS does. But let's leave that aside. You know, how much of credit or flack, depending on which metric you use, does the RSS deserve for the state of India's economy? You know, depending on which metric you use, how much credit or flack does the RSS deserve there?
Well, actually, if you look at Mr. Modi's vision, I wouldn't say it's substantially different from the broad themes that the RSS has been talking about. Say, Modi has not been a great votary of, say, privatization. He's doing it only reluctantly towards the end of his tenure. He has not been a great, he has been talking about, he has shifted the BJP decidedly to the central left, but he's been talking about the poor. In fact, if you see, the people who are more unhappy today are probably the business guys, given the kind of things that has been done, including the GST, the demonetization, the attack on black money in general, all those things. So if in fact you will see more murmurs from the business side rather than that. So and even in the case of Air India, only 49% foreign ownership is possible. So I mean, there is some fudgy kind of alignment between the two, and I would say that and also Mr. Modi has been an RSS Karyakarta for a very long time. So it's not likely that he will be a completely different person when he comes and becomes a Prime Minister. So there is some amount of correlation between their thought processes, but as Prime Minister he has to think differently, and that's what we are seeing. So I would say there are some elements of the RSS agenda remain, but the decisions are probably taken by the Prime Minister in what he thinks is the best interest of the country and for the party and for the people.
I think they very often call that influence being the umbilical cord when it comes to the RSS and the BJP. But let me take it across to Ratan Sharda, and going by Mr. Bhagwat's speech today, he obviously was never in direct confrontation or in direct contrast with the government and its policies, but there were a number of things that he spoke on which is very contrary to the position that the government has taken, at least the Modi government has taken. Is it fair to then assume that there is a disconnect between Nagpur and New Delhi?
Well, I was there, you know, the whole lecture I heard, I made notes, I also recorded it. I think your reading is much different from what I had when I heard the speech. For example, I'll just point out keynotes of his address. One was, don't be tied down to any ism. You have to go beyond ism to find solutions to this country's problems.
Sure.
Second was, he said, serve the last man. That is the ultimate success of any economic policy. If your policy doesn't serve the last man in the queue, then you have to see what is wrong with it. And I think I wrote an article 6 months back or about a year back that Modi's policies are all for the last man. You look at Antyodaya, you look at the gas, you look at power, you look at Jan Dhan Yojana, everything. I will not go much in that because today's debate is different. He talked about earth has enough for your need but not for your greed, so we have to control our you know, consumerism solution. They talk of consumerism. He taught of earth kam as part of economics. We are not all spiritual and don't want industry. He said we had industry for long, we had successful economy for long. Earth and kam is part of our dharma, and dharma is nothing but that holds the society together. It is not religion. He talked about decentralized economics, not a centralized economics. You talked about big manufacturing which can support smaller manufacturers and also let them thrive. He talked about business that should not corrupt people, business that should be supporting people. So these are very broad outlines. I think none of it goes against what Modi is doing today. And if there is he also said that I cannot prescribe any policies because policies change as the situation changes. I can only talk about direction the economy can take, and on that he spoke about farmers. He talked about self-sufficiency. He talked about how economy can grow with quality products and how we can increase by having better quality products and pride in what we do. This is the broad, what he said. I see nothing contradictory about what Modi is doing or what he is saying.
Okay, so I think there is no contradiction between what Modi is saying and the RSS is saying. The question to debate is there a contradiction between what Modi is doing and what the RSS is saying and what Modi himself is saying, and we'll speak about each of those specific issues. You spoke about SMEs, you spoke about poor people, you spoke about farmers, policies toward big business. We'll speak about each one of them. Let's get Rajiv Desai in first. Your comments on this notion of the government being for the poorest, you know, reaching out to the needy, for the poorest in the chain. You know, have this government's policies been tailor-made for the poor? Rajiv Desai.
Well, I think that what I read of the speech by the RSS leader is that he has a sort of a legacy view of economics. We've heard all of this before. There was a smattering of license permit Raj. there was a smattering of son of the soil economics. And you know, it's a little, therefore, it's very clear that Mr. Modi, if anything, stands criticized today for the disruptions he has caused in the economy, the lack of employment, the lack of investment, the lack of trade, everything. Now it's very clear the confusion stems from this, that they have no real forward-looking prescription for the economy. They're always looking back. Oh, Air India cannot be given, the investor must be Indian. I mean, we've heard all of this stuff before, going back to the 70s and 80s and 90s. So is this what is this Mr. Modi's idea of maximum governance, minimum government? Is this Mr. Modi's idea of unleashing animal spirits? I doubt it. I mean, I don't think that there's a clear understanding of the economy. This is all retreaded stuff from way back when, from the big planning days and big public sector days and so forth. In fact, the tax terror that's been unleashed on the population today is very similar to what was there during the Mahalanobis regime. Everybody was seen as a corrupt person and all of this. So really, I can now begin to understand why Mr. Modi's economic policies are so confused, and why they're also kind of it's full of surprises. You know, demonetization, GST, high taxes. This is the highest tax regime we've ever known in India. Import duties are high. They are now thinking of introducing a further income tax on what payments are made to employees, such as housing and all of that. So this is all yesterday's stuff, and that too being recycled in a confused manner.
Right. Okay, that's one interpretation, and Ratan Chawda was the other interpretation.
You want me
but let me take this across
say something more.
Mohan Guruswamy. No, I understand. I understand your point. I've taken it on board. I'll come back to you for another question. But let me take it across to Mohan Guruswamy. And Mohan Guruswamy, apart from the seeming disconnect between the RSS and what the Modi government is doing, I also have a very specific question on the kind of decisions that have been made. Clearly, in an effort to administer bitter dose, as the Prime Minister chose to call it, to clean up the Indian economy through demonetization and then GST, the biggest impact has been on the MSME sector. Now, given Mohan Bhagwat's clarion call on relook, refocusing on the MSMEs, is the RSS telling the Modi government to change its stance and begin focusing on the small, micro, medium enterprises now?
Well, I don't think the RSS is really saying anything, because they don't really have much to say on such issues. The speech is, it could be all things to all people. And there's a lot of generalisms there. There's nothing specific. You can say that, big business should have clusters of SMEs. It's already happening. Most SMEs actually cater to big businesses, whether it's in the automobile sector, electrical sector, whatever. But, what is new in it? There's nothing specific. And this whole business that, he made one thing very specific, with this comment on Air India, that, foreign airlines or foreign partly owned entities should not fly on Indian airspace, as is something sanctified. Jet is already doing that. The Tata Vistara is flying with Singapore. So, so this shows that they're a little out of touch with reality also. You sit cocooned in a little place in the center of India, you don't have connections with large numbers of people, cross-sections of people, so you don't understand these issues. He's still talking about India being an agricultural state. The fact is that only half of India is now rural, and out of that half, only 1/3 are landowners. The rest are all working in different sectors. India could be considered rural, but not agricultural anymore. Agriculture is only a small part of our GDP, and agriculture is a big employer. And the focus should be not on, keeping more people on land, but how to get them off the land. So, talking about isms, no isms, there's no ism anyway, except the only ism the RSS understands is Hinduism. And that was their version of Hinduism.
Okay.
Not what the rest of the world believes in.
Okay.
So I don't think we could take this talk very seriously.
Okay, don't take this talk seriously. That's a scathing attack from Mohan Guruswamy. He's saying that they have no vision for the economy and they're cut off from the rest of the population. Only fair allow Ratan Sharda to come in and counter the points made both by Rajiv Desai and by Mohan Guruswamy. Quick rebuttal, Ratan.
2, 3 things. First of all, he also said that take the best from the world. We are not present to our own ideas. We should take what can be done as per our own requirements of the world. We talk of low economic growth. We all know, you are sitting on a financial channel. Growth has come back to India in a big way. All the indicators are positive. Every indicator is positive today, and we are on the growth path. That's what every report tells. So we cannot keep on repeating falsehood. If you remember, Mohan ji long time back cautioned against the very bad effect of complex GST rules when MSME was being heard, and that was listened by the government, and we saw some softening of that stance there. And you talk of in such a condescending manner about Mr. Mohan Bhagwat. Remember, he travels the whole of country, right from hills to villages to cities to towns to industries to every backyard of this country, not sitting in TV studios or libraries. He knows much more than about India than all of you put together. So let us not try to be condescending a person who is well read, who has travelled across India to each and every small and big place. He knows the pulse of the people. He knows what people are heard. Please don't disturb. You are a learned man. I am saying let us not assume that you have all the knowledge. He has much better grip on the people's pulse than you have. I can guarantee that. Go meet him and understand what he speaks about. And if they can understand and they can caution people of GST's ill effect, if you know that the whole economy is now bouncing back in a very wonderful way. I have businessmen of all the places in Delhi who always believe in do number ka dhanda. They said, we are ready to take the kick from this new policies if it is good for the country. We don't want corrupt Congress to come back. This is the sound. This is the people who told me this time in Delhi that we have been hurt, but we are happy because if the nation takes a better direction, we are all for it.
Okay, point taken.
He also said, I cannot talk of policies. Again, I am repeating. He said, I can only talk the direction of the economy because policies will keep on changing.
I'll make a quick point.
So don't talk of myopics and all that.
Mr.
Guruswamy, you are a dinosaur to me today.
Okay. Mohan Guruswamy, 10 seconds. You said I need to go to Narendra Taneja.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Guruswamy, go ahead.
There has been growth, but it's also well recorded that the growth has been there at about the same levels that prevailed during the previous 10 years, and nothing really new has happened. And what has happened is
it's a cleaner growth.
73% of the growth has gone to only 1% of the population. You haven't got jobs. You haven't created jobs.
Okay,
and,
I take that point, and Mohan Guruswamy, let me interrupt you. We will debate each of those specific
these are also
issues.
factors you got to consider. Who does this economy serve?
Okay, who does this economy serve? And the fact that we haven't created jobs are specific issues. We will debate, let's keep this debate to issues and not digress to individuals. That's what we try and do on the India development debate. But, since we were speaking of MSMEs, I have to ask you this question, Narendra Taneja. Contrary to what, I know this government goes out of its way to be seen as a government that is working for the growth of MSMEs, that wants to power MSMEs as a growth engine. But contrary to what the government would want us to believe, data suggests otherwise. MSMEs have clearly been in the receiving end. In FY10, MSMEs contributed 36.75% to the GDP, which declined to under 30% in FY15 and to just 28.77% in FY16. According to All India Manufacturers Organizations, MSMEs were the worst hit, like everybody know, due to demonetization, losing 35% jobs, half their revenues in the first 1 month since note ban. So can the government deny the fact that they have let down MSMEs, no matter what Mr. Bhagwat might say, no matter what the Prime Minister might say, that MSMEs are the ones suffering the most? Narendra Taneja.
You see, when the figures you are quoting, a lot of that, figures are also coming from the past, in the sense since we came to power, SMEs and including the new industries, neo sector, that's our main focus. And if you look at when the Prime Minister says, the government says, we are transforming the rural economy, transformation of rural economies in areas which are between the big cities and the small towns and all that, that's all, our focus is on SMEs. So we believe it, and that was Mr. Bhagwat was also talking about, that if you have to create more jobs and transform the economy and at the same time tap into India's potential in terms of an economic power, to unleash that, call it animal, spirit or whatever it is. That cannot be done only by the large companies or large corporates. We need SMEs for that. That's what basically we are focusing on. And at the same time, I want to say, first of all, very clear, RSS never ever interferes in the government affair. They never do that. They can express their views and thoughts and ideas, but they never ever interfere. That's for your record. But second point, what Mr. Bhagwat said, he said that India should be the global leader, and he says very clearly on that India has to develop its own model of development. And I personally agree with it. I mean, if we are just going to copy in everything China or the United States or Europe, it might have its own advantages, but in the long term, we also have to see that, we have to put our own stamp on number of things. I mean, it requires, more time to debate these things. But lot of us believe in that. And not only in the Bharatiya Janata Party, also I've seen in some other political parties that we need to learn. For instance, the mistake that China has committed, should we be committing the same mistake? Look what we have done to Delhi and Bombay in terms of air contamination, water contamination and all that. We should have learned something from them.
Right.
Now, even I go and tell my friends in Africa, don't follow us. Develop your own model. So there's a long debate. So Mr. Bhagwat, when you look at the speech very carefully, and it's my independent view, look at it. He has spoken so well. He understands the spirit of India. He understands the soul of this country, and that reflects in that speech.
Okay. All right. Just hold your thoughts there, because I'm going to take it across to R. Jagannathan to get his view on a more specific, pointed question, and perhaps an attempt that Mohan Bhagwat was trying to make there. Jaggi, the RSS chief, and the RSS is very well known, has been very critical of the government's stance on MSMEs during demonetization and the GST. To quote the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, and if I may, on the GST it says, GST is to ease corporate taxing, it will be a burden on the common man. It then in another statement said, this is against the common man, it is not a step taken by the welfare state, which has to think about the welfare of the common people. After GST, the prices of cars will fall and that of cloth will rise. Those were the statements that came in from the RSS affiliates. Has the BJP, in the process of this cleanup or the so-called bitter dose and all of that, deserted its core constituency? And was Mohan Bhagwat trying to reach out to preserve that core constituency today?
See, I think there is a misunderstanding of what we call the small and SME sector. I think our problem is that our small sector has been suboptimal and has refused to grow. It is what Manish Sabharwal calls, we have a dwarf sector, not a small sector. A small sector that doesn't become medium and medium doesn't become large, or a micro doesn't become small, is essentially a static sector which depends only on tax evasion to survive. So that kind of sector does not have a future. It will have suboptimal wages, suboptimal incomes, suboptimal profits, and it is purely existing out of the fact that there is a lot of tax evasion to be done by bribing A, B and C. So that's not what we need. We need a vibrant small and medium sector, and the shocks administered by both demonetization and GST, as long as GST is made simplified, continuously simplified for the next 12 months, if you are able to make compliance so easy, then you will get a vibrant small and medium sector that we really need, where wages are much better, where they are compliant with labor laws. Currently you have an SME sector that doesn't comply with any law, and it exists only for the sake of the proprietor to make some money and exploit people with suboptimal wages. So I think the theme of Bhagwat is right, that you must protect the SME sector, but you do not need a suboptimal sector that survives only on tax evasion and complete flouting of labor laws. That's not what we need. It's not going to help us.
Okay, fair enough. Let's, on the same sort of thought, the RSS chief categorically said that big business should be based on the foundation of MSMEs. Rajiv Desai, how does that fit in with the reality of the day? Are big businesses in India sort of based on the foundation of MSMEs? I mean, Modi government has often been criticized for having a slant towards large corporates in its policy making, in its thinking. How do these comments fit in with the government's position as far as big business is concerned, and the perception of the government being close to big business?
Most certainly, if you look at some of the more equitable economies of the world, you'll find that the entire big business has been built up on a network of medium and small businesses who supply to them various parts, various services and so forth. In India, that's actually, the policies have not worked at all in the past several years, because it's all been big business. Even if you look in a sector like advertising and marketing and so forth, you'll find that all small groups of small agencies, small businesses have all been subsumed under a larger international company which has bought them all out. So you have a WPP here, you have a this is in the advertising marketing sector. So everywhere it seems to be not growing off the productivity and innovation of the small and medium sector, but rather on the exploitation thereof, and then finally just leaving them be. So no, I don't think this big business model is worth anything, and which is one of the reasons why it's come in for this criticism that you were talking about, which is that it's a crony kind of a model, only friends benefit and so forth. We've seen that in the case of the Rafale deal, we've seen that in so many such cases, we've seen that in the case of the copper deal in Australia, we've seen so many such deals where it is natural for people then to begin to question it, because there are no jobs. The primary reality, hard reality of India is that there's a huge population and young people. It's all young people. This was supposed to be the demographic dividend. It's turning out to be a demographic disaster, because that the government is not able to even conceive of conditions that can create jobs. And then they do faddish things like demonetization and GST, which makes it worse. And you, unless and until you find jobs for the young people who are coming into the labor market every month, if not every week, you're staring at a disaster. And you can plan you can do Make in India, set up India, this India, that India. The reality is that there are no jobs, and furthermore, they have no assessment that the way the technological trends are taking place, there's also automation coming in. So there too, there's a reduction in employment opportunities. So, I mean, somebody's got to sit down and think this through. Instead, we just get all these brain waves or whatever. This is a terrible way to run an economy, seriously.
Yeah. That's putting it very correctly. I mean, I just think sometimes we miss the bigger picture in a debate when we discuss big business versus small. But I still will ask the contrarian question on this, and in contrast to what we asked earlier, Mohan Guruswamy, just to be the devil's advocate here, the allegations or the perception that this government is pro-big business, does that have any basis? Because if you actually look at what they've been doing, the government seems to have gone on an overdrive, an overkill to penalize big business, whether it's a change in the IBC norms or penalizing them otherwise, or a crackdown on NPAs. Big business seems to be at the receiving end of their policies.
No, all governments we've had in India have this legacy of history of penalizing big business. We are all afraid of big business, and what this government is as guilty as the previous regimes are is crony capitalism, favoring a few, because government allocates resources. Most of the big businesses today are somehow related to the government, either in terms of airtime or land or water or whatever. And so, government allocates resources, and there are cronies there. Cronies fund elections, and so nothing really has changed. And, as far as SMEs are concerned, I think, and we've created pockets of high income, high wages to people in those sectors, like in government. Highest wages in the country, in the government, accounts to 10.4% of GDP. Highest wages to large companies, which are highly unionized. And the SMEs, are sweatshops. They have to be sweatshops because the number of workers chasing few jobs are huge. So obviously wages will be depressed. So therefore, to bring them under this, net of big business and say, you will unionize everybody, BMS will go everywhere and unionize them, that is not going. It's only going to make them more inefficient. All over the world, small businesses are sweatshops. Even in Japan, when standard of living goes up, their standard of living also goes up, but it is always below the big sector. So I don't think you can turn SMEs into big sector kind of companies.
Okay, fair enough.
With those kind of norms.
Okay.
They have different sets of rules, and nothing wrong in seeking to make money. That's why you're in business.
Okay,
You're
fair
not
enough.
in business to employ people.
Absolutely.
You want to make money. So
Okay.
I don't think we should. Yeah, okay.
Okay, point taken. Ratan Charda, I know you wanted to comment on the point made there by Rajiv Desai, but I'm slipping in a question to you as well on jobs. And again, since you are closer to the RSS than anyone else in this panel, I'm trying to understand how to interpret this. Contrary to the government insisting that 70 lakh new jobs have been created, I thought the RSS chief was emphatic in stating that job creation has to be the primary focus, and job generating industries are indeed needed. Now, obviously, one doesn't expect him to go on a public platform and criticize the government of the BJP, but is there a disagreement between Nagpur and Delhi on job creation? Because the government seems to indicate that there is no job crisis, that all is well, that we are creating as many jobs as we need to. Ratan Charda.
See, there is no doubt that job creation is there. The myth that is being continuously floated by opposition saying that there are no jobs being created, that is point one. Point two, to caution the government about raising the employment levels further is a good sign of any good leader to caution the people that we need more jobs. So it is not any contrary to what these people are doing, but maybe he wants more jobs to be created, which is perfectly right. Coming to SME, everybody is trying to berate MSME. Even today, 44.70% of the exports are done by MSME. The GDP 37.54 still comes from MSME. 8 million jobs, or the highest number of jobs, are given to MSME. Today, due to GST, they can't evade taxes. In fact, they are happy that they are getting credit for the GST, which earlier they were not getting. And they are also streamlining the business. So the PF is there, ESI is there to say that they are paying lesser, exploiting labor doesn't work anymore. Labor are there, and of course, you cannot give the kind of salaries that the corporates give. And talk of crony capitalism, do you want to go back to UPA days when the true meaning of crony capitalism was? Here you are, where everything is above board. Every industry agrees there is no corruption at the top. Everybody agrees that licenses and everything comes just as a norm, their duty drawbacks come as a norm. So we can say, okay, now that bottom house is over. And if you say it is funny, do you think controlling black money is funny? Do you think it's funny to streamline the taxes is easy? Who would take the call on GST when it was not done so many years? It's a tough call that government made, and the results are showing. So I am saying that sweatshop, what is IT? We talk of IT as a corporate sector. It is the biggest sweatshops of the world. And our people in the IT industry who have called themselves corporate leaders never did any serious product development, never did any serious IP business. I am from IT industry, I can say it. I have been berated for saying so, but we have been using people, skilled people as sweatshops. So if there is industry which is purely sweatshop, like garment industry, what do you expect? So let us be fair to MSME. They were worried about the very complex GST laws, which even Mr. Bhagwat noted many months back, and that is how they were softened. So we have to keep our eyes open, we have to keep our eyes to the ground and keep on evolving the policies and keep on changing policies as the economy changes. But to say that we will not make any experiment, we will keep on doing the way as the world where the India was doing, corrupt, do number and all that, where we used to talk 40% of economy being do number. So now we have the scenario where people are ready to turn around and wait for the complete, proper, transparent business. So let us welcome it. And if that is still showing that is growth,
right.
Imagine what will happen in the next 4 years. We are talking 7.5 to 9.5 in next 4 years. That is what the government should do.
Come in.
They are taking the challenge up.
Okay. Okay. What you essentially talk about is all right, but the efforts of the government culminate. Just, okay, go ahead and make a quick point before I go across to Narendra Taneja.
Are you asking me?
I think Rajiv Desai, you wanted to make a point, sir, very quickly, please.
Yes, yes, please. I want to specifically address this issue of the IT sector that Mr. Sharda talked about. The fact of the matter is that the IT sector is going through cataclysmic change. It is working, it has to get away from this body shopping and all of that, and it's looking into finding IT applications for Indian industry, and it's looking inward, and it's looking to set up in areas of cloud computing, data analytics, all of this stuff, where of course they need the help. Then if there was a government who even understood these things, they would provide some help. On the contrary, with the mess they made by politicizing the entire telecom sector, the complete mess they made, it has created a huge big crimp on this redirection of the IT industry to focus internally on India, whether it's cloud computing, data analytics, but without basic phone lines, broadband, everything which you have somehow politicized and brought to a screeching halt. You've created a whole big obstacle for that industry. So don't talk in the air. Nobody's saying that MSMEs are not good or anything. MSMEs are the heart and soul of any economy, but they have not developed, and now as they were taking off, we saw this happen with the entry of mobile telephony, with the entry of various other things, retail, trades and all of that. It was just picking up steam, and then bang, demonetized. So I mean, please, it's our economy. We are all Indians.
Right.
Don't keep on saying politicize Congress, this, that. Fact of the matter is, if the economy doesn't work, we all suffer. We all suffer. And then people look to say that, well, these guys don't care because they only care about the big businesses.
So effectively you are saying that do-number economy is
No,
good enough?
absolutely. We are all in this together. No, 1 second. We are all in this together. I don't think anybody is contending that we don't care about the Indian economy. The reason why we have
parallel
this
economy,
debate
if you
for
like,
India
very sophisticated
development
language,
debate is
Mr.
precisely
Desai.
to address these issues. Mr. Desai and Mr. Sharda, hold your thoughts. I want to go across to the other point that Mr. Bhagwat made. I think it's important that we discuss that, because this was a very direct statement. He did not mince words, and he essentially talked about government policy in agriculture, and that's when the RSS chief is telling the Modi government to shed its bias towards consumer for pricing of agricultural products, when he says that it's not the buyers who are the real wealth, but the farmers are. Mr. Taneja, is that how the government and BJP is going to read that message? Shed the bias in favor of the consumers as far as pricing of agricultural products are concerned. That bias does exist, there's no denying that.
Well, on pricing, as you know, that we are already kind of doing it, but at the same time, what Mr. Bhagwat said was to strike the right balance. He said to strike the right balance between trade, commerce and agriculture. So it has a much bigger meaning in the sense where you are paying, attention to all these three, verticals in such a way that the overall economy can grow, because he also pointed out India has to be a global leader. And then when he says global leader, it is not limited only to politics. It's of course with a bigger focus on economics. You see, the point is that we can always pick up things and criticize. I'm listening to Mr. Desai. In between, I lost the connection with you. Listening to Mr. Desai, I mean, he can. First of all, I don't really miss the absence of Congress spokesperson, because Mr. Desai at least sounds a little more like the Congress spokesperson. My point is very clear. You see, if you have certain issues since we came to power, and you think
I'm not. I'm an Indian spokesperson.
Everything is suddenly gone downhill. Is that what he's trying to say? No. Okay. Let me complete, Mr. Desai. When you were speaking, I didn't interfere. Okay, have patience. Have patience. This is my view. You can hold on to your view, please. Now the question is, everything has gone wrong. Suddenly India's GDP is not doing well. Suddenly India's image has gone down. Well, the fact is, India is today the third largest economy in the world on PPP. That's what everybody is saying, except the Congress party. And Congress, in a democracy, whatever they say, we fight with them, we argue with them. That's fine when it comes to a political party. And they also privately say something totally different to us when we meet them. But the point here trying to make is, when it comes to agriculture, overall rural economy, trade and all this, to strike the right balance. And this is precisely actually Bharatiya Janata Party is trying to do, and that's part of our broader philosophy.
Okay, point taken. Again, I do want to set the record straight in case you're wondering why the absence of a Congress spokesperson. The Congress party said, "Ye BJP RSS ke aapas ka mamla hai. We don't have anything to say." And Mr. Rajiv Desai is not representing the Congress. He's a government critic. I think everyone in the panel and our viewers know it.
For the Congress, we know
he's a government critic, and so you can call him a government critic. I don't think he calls himself a Congress spokesperson. So let's be clear on that. But he's a government critic, and I think he has.
Well, ask Congress party; they will tell you.
Okay, fair
ask
enough.
Congress
Okay,
party,
but let's. I don't want us to again digress from the core of the debate. Jaggi, we asked a specific question to Mr. Taneja on
across
pricing
televisions to represent the BJP without holding a card there.
Yes. Okay. So let's get a specific question in Jaggi on pricing of agricultural products, and I think this I think you don't need to be a sort of economist to realize that there was a bias in pricing of agriculture products towards the consumer, at least over the first 3.5 years, which one gets the feeling that the government is in the process of correcting since budget 2018. How are you reading these comments? Is it a signal from Nagpur that the government needs to look at more MSP revisions, that the focus has to be on the farmer as against the consumer, who obviously has a sort of bigger say, bigger voice, but the focus should be on the farmer? How are you reading these comments, Jackie?
Actually, I think the plight of the farmer is important to note, but the focus on the farmer has not been helping the farmer. You have every conceivable subsidy on earth being given to the farm sector. You have a power subsidy, a diesel subsidy, a food subsidy, a fertilizer subsidy, seed subsidy, every single subsidy is there, and you are still saying that the farmer is not making money. So the problem is not the lack of focus on the farmer, but the wrong focus on the farmer, where we think higher price is the key for him to do that when you have a problem of excess people on the farm. And it's not as if we are focusing on the consumer. Every 6 months you have problems, people saying, oh, my onion prices have hit the roof, my potato prices have hit. You have a problem there. The real problem is in the middle. It's neither the farmer nor the thing. You have an inefficient supply chain where a potato bought at 2 rupees a kilo from the farm or 50 paise is getting sold at 10, 20, whatever it is. Now that is where the middle sector is completely inefficient. If you fix that problem, both consumers and farmers will benefit. That supply chain is made efficient, which is what we have not done. Put your cold chains, do what thing, do corporate farming, give farm people jobs rather than farming. That's the area where you need to go. I think it's the middle that's the problem. It's not the consumer or the farmer. You have to fix the middle. The middle is swallowing up the bulk of the value added between farm and folk, and that is the problem. That's where you need to concentrate efforts.
Okay, I really want to move across to the other big talking point of that speech, and that has to be Air India. While the government is in the process of selling the national carrier, the RSS chief very categorically said that, and of course he did question how it's being run and all of that, he said Air India should be sold to anyone who can run it properly, but he also asserted at the same time that ownership should be Indian. And this is of course a condition that the government has mandated in the expression of interest as well. Mohan Guruswamy, has the RSS chief influenced the government? Has the RSS chief in some sense restricted the government to think on those lines, to mandate that control and ownership should continue to be Indian?
Well, he's sending out a signal, very clear signal now, because the Air India deal hasn't been struck, and I don't think there are any takers for it right now on the terms the government is offering. But this is the whole business of, foreigners in control. What are they going to do flying planes? How do they, aren't telecom companies around with large foreign shareholdings? Aren't all car makers in India, most of them are foreign? What is the dividend stream? Is the smallest stream out of our business. We should be looking at the value they create here. And instead of that, we're still looking at ownerships like, who owns a halwai shop. So I think that is a non-issue. And I think the government should expand the search, get more people in. If there are foreign airlines wanting to come in, let them come in, because they're not going to steal the country's wealth in the manner which British did by adverse terms of trade. So all that, those notions have to go. But I'd like to come back to one basic issue on isms. The rules of economics cannot be bucked. You cannot have growth unless your savings rate go up. Not the kind of growth we want. Our savings rates are coming down. We are now down at 28%. It used to be at 33% in 2008 or 2009. 10 years we are down. And we've got to step that up, and it's still on a downward trend. Because only when savings go up is the money for investment. Without investment, you will not create jobs. You will not create a transformation of the economy. One thing I am agreed with Mohan Bhagwat is that I'm in favor of the rural sector, the farmers particularly, getting better prices for their commodities.
Okay.
And, and people in urban areas who control choke points of public opinion and dissent should be willing to pay higher prices. That's the real. All over the world, the producer gets the lowest part of the price in food. In any country, you take the price of bread and you take the price of wheat, there are huge differentials.
Okay.
And it's the same in India. But
Okay.
our problem is that we have far too many. 83% of our farmers are small and subsistence. Average holding is 0.6 acres.
Correct.
So he's just not able to make a go out of it.
Okay, fair enough.
So we'll have to think of ways of consolidating holdings, allowing people money to buy land, and lots of things to be done.
Okay.
And so, you know, to that extent, I don't think we should be restricted to any ism.
Okay, we should not be restricted to this. I know we moved away from farmer, but since you brought it in, I know Ratan Chadha had a quick interjection as well on the issue of pricing of agricultural products. Ratan Chadha, quick interjection.
See, I agree that there is a big gap between the supply chain, and I also agree that the government tried to do a lot of things. It tried to kill the mandi monopoly of the middlemen. It tried to open up the barriers where farmers could sell anywhere. And I will just like to make one point that Mr. Bhagwat very clearly said there cannot be environment versus growth, or industry versus society, or farming versus manufacturing. They have to be reconciled and done together. We need all of it. So rather, and coming to halwai shop, do you mean the countries which don't allow the national carriage to be sold in majority stake to outsiders are halwai shops? Secondly, we know we had huge assets in Air India. You are talking of wealth going out. How did Air India become loss making? Mr. Guruswamy, just a moment.
Don't distort what
just
I
a moment. When all the profitable routes are sold out to foreign airlines, that is when Air India got fleeced. It was done during the famous aviation minister. We know how Air India's best profitable routes are given out. So wealth did go down, did go out, and Air India did suffer the loss. It is on the record. You cannot deny that.
Okay, fair enough. You know, I've got a lot of ground to cover. Only 6 minutes left on the show.
For 25 years now.
Okay, fair enough. You know, we've got a lot of ground to cover. Just 6 minutes left on the show. I want to touch upon another important issue. Rajiv Desai, how are you reading the RSS chief's comments on consumption being curbed and the fact that demand needs to be tempered? You know, I'm still wondering, was it a more philosophical, ideological point of view, or is that one that's rooted in economic thinking where, you know, the RSS believes that one needs to sort of, you know, temper consumption, because India is fundamentally a consumption-driven economy?
Well, this is nothing, you know, this is exactly my point, that people have to get out of that mindset. I mean, demand management has been a historical policy in India, an economic policy in India, which is why there were all these problems. And it was only in 91 when the economy was opened up, then you began to look at supply, and you began to look at supply side stuff. So, I mean, what are we talking about? We're going to go back now to the pre-91 days and start managing what people buy? Will we eventually put in rationing? What is going on? What kind of thinking is this? This is thinking from, it's called legacy thinking. That's all over. That argument has been resolved. You got to move on, man. Everybody's moved on. Even Nepal has moved on. So, you know, you've got to do this. Otherwise, you are faced with a huge demographic disaster of people looking for jobs and not finding it. And unless and until you manage it, what was to be an advantage for India is going to go down the tubes of closed minds and completely political thinking. Seriously, I mean that. And you can, and you know, let's talk about issues. Let's not trivialize and personalize comments.
Just small interjection.
Mr. Desai, I'm sorry, but I'll have to. Mr. Desai, I'm sorry, but I'll have to come in. There are just 3 minutes left on the show, and I have plenty of ground to cover there. Jaggi, coming to you very quickly on a question that has plagued my mind.
The consumption control is not about controlling consumption, it is about tempering.
For measuring progress. 1 second, Mr. Sharda, I've got 2.5 minutes left on the show. Please don't interfere, I'll come back to you in just a bit. He said GDP is not the correct criteria for measuring progress, but for a nation, government, establishment, industry, we in media, we're obsessed with growth numbers. How realistically is it to expect to look at growth without looking at the headline numbers? Jaggi.
See, I think GDP is the easiest measure we have to measure how much we are making progress in the aggregate, though it doesn't tell you much about the distribution of the GDP. Even the per capita income does not tell you that, because there is a huge gap between those who generate the GDP and those who consume the GDP. So the point is that, but however, you could look at it differently. I think a lot of countries are trying to move away from GDP alone as a pure measure of what should be state policy. I mean, the Nordic countries have moved away. They are talking, Amartya Sen himself has said GDP is only one limited measure. We need to measure other forms of development, HDI and other things. Bhutan has gone for a gross national happiness index. So I think he is not exactly out of tune with all these thoughts which have come a full circle from pure GDP measurement to something that's little less measurable, but probably something that we need to look at also. So I wouldn't be so hard on him on this.
Okay, you wouldn't be so hard on him on this. Closing comments. Ratan Chadha, the RSS chief, also made an emphatic pitch for peace to be a precondition for growth and progress. Given the crime against women, the recent incidents that have come to light, atrocities against Dalits and cases of communal violence, what's the signal here? Is it a signal to the government to pay more heed to the so-called peace dividend?
See, definitely a society progresses when it is in peace, when it is living a happy life. And he very clearly mentioned that people can be happy when they have got their requirements fulfilled. And talking of consumption, he did not talk of controlling consumption. He talked of Indian philosophy or living within means, which has been the theory all over the world. A former filmmaker, Mansoor Khan, has given his last decade working on it. He has a book called The Third Wave, and he has been lecturing about it. He is not an RSS man. So there are people in the world who are giving a rethink to working on the growth pattern, which you know talk of consumption. So this is an alternative way of looking at how we preserve our resources and go about it. So I don't think we should look at something regressive. It's something which is now coming back in the world over. So which is the way because we don't have unlimited resources. That's agreed. So this talk of growing unabatedly and then finding resources being totally consumed is the bane of today's economy and the globe.
May I?
Okay,
Please.
I have a quick last 30 seconds left on the show, and Naren Taneja, I'm coming to you. Given the commentary that has come in from your ideologue RSS earlier today and its chief, 2019 is just a year away. We will slip into election mode. What is it that we should expect on the economic policy front from the government in the last 1 year?
Well, very clearly, of course, we'll keep pushing growth and reform wherever necessary. Air India is a strategic asset, so we look at Air India a bit differently. Indian ownership is fine. China is not going to hand over Air China to America or to Canadians. They're not going to do that. For us, we are still at the stage where Air India is a strategic asset. But growth, pushing growth, making India more attractive for foreign investor, domestic investor, but at the same time, making sure that every Indian gets the benefit of economic growth that we all together are producing.
Indeed, completely timed out then in this edition of the India development debate. While you could criticize or compliment what was said, we welcome the fact that the RSS chief went to the Bombay Stock Exchange and gave a speech on the RSS vision for the economy road ahead, because India needs to know what is the RSS view, and it needs to be debated on a platform like this, and we need to develop a model of development that works for the country. And if RSS has a point of view, it's something that we need to debate without short, as long as we're clear on the fact that we put growth above everything else.
On that note, thanks very much for this wonderful panel, for joining us, and thank you viewers for tuning in. Up next is Top 10 at 10 with Tanya Bharadwaj.
Good night.